Hey friends, this is just a quick disclaimer. This week on the podcast, while recording, we had some interference crop up, so you will hear some static during some segments of the show. We're not entirely sure where the static came from. We didn't hear it while we were recording, and while I was able to minimize it, I wasn't able to eliminate it completely. So I hope you enjoy the show otherwise, and apologies for the weird audio quality ticks. And now, here is the show. Greetings, programs. Welcome to the awesome Friday podcast for the week of April the 9th? 10th. It's the 10th. We're recording on the 9th, but it's the 10th. This week we're talking about two new things, as we always do. My name is Matthew, and with me is Simon. Say hello, Simon.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad we've cleared the date up. That's very important. I hope you're all well today.
It's very important to have a sense of place and time, and I feel like it's important that I set that place of time.
It's true. I always find it very strange at Christmas time. I like to watch the British Broadcasting Corporation at Christmas time, and all of their regular shows have like pre-recorded Christmas shows, which they record like months ahead of time, and I enjoy watching them. But there's this strange thing because they all have live audiences where they're all lying. They're all like, "Merry Christmas! Did you have a good morning?" Like, "Yes, we did." And they filmed this in like September, and so
yeah, that's normal. They do that here too. Most of the comedy shows record their Christmas specials in September, October.
I just find it's another example of the open willingness to believe what you're told when you watch something on TV. That's why I always enjoy people I watched Lord of the Rings and there was a fight at nighttime and it was far too light. Where was the light coming from? Do you know where the light's coming from? It's coming from Fantasyland.
That's actually one of my favorite anecdotes about very specifically this. I don't know if this is where you're coming from, but one of my very favorite anecdotes about the Lord of the Rings is that during the setup and pre-production for that movie, and very specifically during the setup and pre-production for the battle at Helm's Deep, they're setting up all the people on the battlements, and they're setting up this lighting rig. And someone asked the production designer, "Where's all that light coming from?" And apparently he said, "Same place as the music."
Oh yes, exactly. Right. It's like the speed of hyperspace in science fiction. It is like hyperspace is the what's the famous quote? Hyperspace is the speed of the story, like the speed of the narrative.
It's the speed. That's why there's multiple warp factors. It's whichever one the narrative requires.
I like that. I always enjoy the point at which people believe something until they just can't understand, where's the lighting coming from? Like the orcs are fine, the elves are fine, but the lighting, oh, that's a problem.
It all comes from this place of, I think it's more prevalent recently, but all these the place where people tend to look at movies as a puzzle to be solved rather than a thing to be enjoyed, and the CinemaSins model, which I hate.
Oh God, let's not get even to CinemaSins. That makes me so angry. Not just some of the supposed sins are completely wrong in their name, but just it's the completely wrong way to approach a movie.
Yeah, and I think lots of people do it that way now, and it's a problem. There was I tweeted something earlier this week. I just quote tweeted someone, and my comment was that we need to do a better job educating media literacy, and it was because this guy posted something about how he thought that children writing stories with conflict in them was wrong. And that his kids write perfectly good stuff without conflict at all. And I was like, no, they don't. They just don't. That's not how storytelling works. You can't write this person fundamentally doesn't seem to understand what conflict is in a story.
Maybe he thought conflict was like fighting and fisticuffs.
That's clearly it, right? He clearly thought that conflict meant violence as opposed to narrative conflict, like any obstacle to the protagonist sorting out their problem.
Do you know something I learned as a drama teacher? I learned very late into my drama teaching career that the word drama is Greek and it means something happens. Did you know that?
No, but it tracks.
Yeah, the word drama
like
means something happens. So I found that very useful and interesting. It's the conflict. Oh no, let's not get into conflict in writing. We're not here to talk about that. I was about to go off on one, but no, I'm not in a classroom, so no.
Well, This week on the podcast, we are going back to our usual format of talking about two different things. We're talking about the latest disaster porn epic by Roland Emmerich, Moonfall, and then we'll be following that up with a discussion of the latest HBO Max in the States Crave series here in Canada, Our Flag Means Death, from the Taika Waititi and the people who did What We Do in the Shadows. And spoiler alert, I believe we both like them both.
It's going to be a love fest for the next hour. Just like if you're up for it, we're up for it, basically.
Yeah. So I think we're going to dive into that right now, and let's start with Moonfall. I think, and here's the premise of Moonfall, and
well,
basically, what if the moon fell? And that's actually that's as deep as it gets.
That's people. That's it.
Basically, I mean, there's nothing else to say.
As the resident, out of both of us, which one of us has been directly directed by Roland Emmerich? And furthermore, which one of us has been told to act less by Roland Emmerich, which I believe is a badge of honor, because Roland Emmerich is not known for his subtlety. But I got to see it firsthand on the set of 2012 when I was in 2012. I perhaps was too realistic for him. I don't think he was ready for my method acting. I was employing some Jared Leto tricks that I've picked up.
Yeah, I'm sure that was it. I'm sure that was it.
So we talked about this acceptance when you go to watch a movie, this acceptance that you are going to believe what you see, that you have to forget the fact that you know you're watching sets and you know these recognizable actors. So the main part of your brain knows that it's not real, so you have to be able to turn that off. And there's lots of studies into this willful like abandonment of reality so we can enjoy something.
Yeah, my favorite way it's been put was I believe it was an interview for Men in Black back in the day. Someone asked Tommy Lee Jones about the believability of the story, and he called it the gleeful suspension of disbelief.
Yes. And the thing about Roland Emmerich is that you just got to do that a lot. And if you can get on board with his style of like disaster movie, and really there's not many people who make a better disaster movie than Roland Emmerich. If you can get on board with that, then you are going to have a really good time, because this isn't just suspension of disbelief. This is taking your belief, putting it in a box and wrapping it in like sticky tape and then chaining it to a brick and throwing it in the ocean, and you never see your disbelief again. There are so many stupid things in this film. In fact, you saw this a couple of days before me, and you just kept sending me texts like, all right, you know when I said you're not going to believe the last thing, you are definitely not going to believe the crazy shit that comes in this movie. And you were right. It's fantastic. And there's so, like, this is not a movie that cares about whether you can justify the physics of this movie. In fact, there's one moment, like, they specifically wanted the moon to do a thing, but the moon wouldn't do that thing if it got close to Earth. So they were just like, well, it's heavier. Then that's why it's doing it. It's like, oh, okay, sure.
I mean,
I'll chalk that up. I'll chalk that up on the list.
So I think a fuller synopsis of this film is that Patrick Wilson plays an ex-astronaut who in his last mission was attacked by something in space, and he claimed he was attacked, but no one else saw it, and he was basically laughed out of NASA. And now the moon is out of orbit, and he gets to come back and say, aha, I told you so. And the guy who played, I really feel like a jerk now because I always do, have forgotten his name. John Bradley, who was in Game of Thrones, is a, quote, mega structuralist who believes that the moon is a hollow construct placed there by aliens, gets to have his aha moment when that is revealed to be true. And Halle Berry plays the boss of NASA, and they have to go to the moon to figure out why it's going out of orbit and basically like restart the moon, if you will.
It sounds so stupid when you say it, and it feels so stupid when you watch it. But it's just so gloriously. It's the closest you're going to get to like a fairground ride as a movie.
This is definitely a film that. Yeah, I mean, just approach it on its own terms, man. Like, on the one hand, it's stupid. On the other hand, you're going to get to see a space shuttle launch through a tsunami.
Oh my
This is,
god!
and that's not
Did
even
you?
like the third most bug nuts thing that happens in it. Like it is completely off the rails the whole time, but in the best way possible. I don't know who needs to hear this, but Roland Emmerich makes ridiculous movies, and I'm generally here for it. You know, like it's when he tries to get serious that I don't really like his work. It's but give me the Independence Days and the 2012s and the Days After Tomorrow and this, and I'm into it. And so, and to be fair, some of the effects are immaculate. Like a lot of the moon effects, a lot of the stuff that happens on and quote in the moon, the effects are spectacular. Really great compositing of digital effects, really just pristine digital effects. Like it's all really, really, really well put together. And you really have, Patrick Wilson who really buys into the role and really sells what's happening, and seems to both understand how ridiculous it is, but that we need to be able to believe it. He's really good at that.
I think that's the key with this kind of movie, that you absolutely need actors who act like this is real. And
Yeah, I think another good example of Patrick Wilson selling that is when he played Ocean Master in Aquaman, which is a fundamentally ridiculous part.
oh,
And
right, yeah,
but like he sells the shit out of it the whole time.
yeah.
And the same is true here.
Oh,
He's
it is.
Yeah. And John Bradley plays the same kind of character that he played in Game of Thrones, like, kind of timid, kind of, I'm a coward, type thing, but it works. He's the nerdy comic relief, and Halle Berry plays the badass boss bitch, and they all go to space together and they have a transcendental experience, and it's just wonderful.
It's quite nice actually that John Bradley's playing a part that usually would be on the side. He'd be like the best friend, the kooky like English best friend to go, all right, mate, what's out? Amongst all the other like, oh, the moon's falling, bloody hell. And I really like actually Halle Berry's character and Patrick Wilson's character have this kind of, they're clearly old friends, but they're never being romantic with each other because
Yeah.
the very very beginning has them talk about the wedding. He went to her wedding, blah blah blah, and their relationship actually changes a lot, like twice during this movie. And so I really liked, especially like I thought Halle Berry was fantastic, and she's 55 now, and I don't think she's ever looked better on screen. And in this, she's not wearing it, as far as I can tell. She's not wearing any makeup that would make you think she's wearing a lot of makeup. Like she's not made up like she was in her like Bond days and back then. But she's really commanding, and I thought that in John Wick 3, was it 3 she was in?
Yeah, part 3.
But I think she's even better in this. Like she's got a lot of screen presence, and she's got like clearly she's got some action shots as well. I really, really would love this to be like Halle Berry Renaissance as older woman, because she looks spectacular as well. She's just so beautiful. So she's great in this, and I like the dynamic of the characters and how they take each other seriously as well. And just when all this bonkers shit is going on, they believe in it, and they are like scrambling to rescue people up flooded stairways, and like as you mentioned, fly a rocket through a tsunami. And the nice thing about moments like that is that they're going to make it. There's no chance the movie's going to go and they all died.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
so it's kind of it's coming, but it comes right at the last second. And there's like, we go back to moaning about the Oscars for editing, but a film like this only works when it's edited to the right musical beats. Like it's Emmerich knows how to write a musical. Like this thing has got the bones of a musical, just no music in it. Well, that they sing anyway. And
well, it's sort of like action movies, right? They both need to,
yeah,
action movies and musicals both need to function on a sort of rhythm.
yeah, totally.
And it's never a surprise when a director of one is good at directing the other.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah,
So
I mean, everyone else in the movie is pretty good too. I do think we should probably at least briefly talk about how this movie was funded by China. And it's really fascinating how narratives are changing as more
I didn't really
Chinese
notice.
money's filtered in. What's that?
I didn't really notice the Chinese influence in the narrative at all. Like,
I mean, except for the, you know, gratuitously Chinese character and language drops and all that kind of stuff. Which, to be fair, doesn't not work in the narrative. It's not like, I guess gratuitous is the wrong word, but there's a Chinese speaking character who doesn't serve a ton of plot importance.
If you've seen not DBC, the Meg, right? If any of you have seen the Meg,
which, by the way, you should definitely have seen the Meg.
Oh, the Meg is fantastic, but there's a Chinese scientist in there who kind of saves the day, and if you watch that and felt, wow, it really feels like that was maybe like rewritten after the Chinese funding came in to show this Chinese character saving the Americans and being like good, then this feels exactly the same. Like there's no like overt reason. She's just there, and it's you can almost see the layers being written in, like, oh, we've got money from Tencent or whoever, so, and the deal is prominent Chinese characters speaking Mandarin in sections, having massive positive influence, and maybe even saving a few of them,
and teaching there's a child. Halle Berry's character has a child that's learning Mandarin from this character as well.
Yeah. And there's always scenes about Americans and looking after the Chinese, and the Chinese saving the Americans, and it does feel a little bit layered, shall we say?
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. Like watching this, not just the Chinese funding, but the importance of the Chinese market has massively increased over the last 10 years, and it's really, really interesting to me to watch American movie narratives change for this new market, and how much stars are doing to be part of that new market as well. Like John Cena is learning Mandarin specifically to appeal more to that market. So I found that really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Sucks that China is a humanitarian nightmare, but it is interesting the influence their culture is currently exerting over media.
So that's the problem, isn't it? Like this new market that is extremely lucrative, that is giving you tons of money. I mean, it's money for influence, isn't it? It's influencing the narrative to help people see China in a better light. And then on the flip side, you've got this terrible, terrible human rights violations and religious violations, and documented proof of like re-educating farms for Muslims, and
ongoing genocide of the Uyghurs.
And that's without even talking about Taiwan and Hong Kong and Tibet, and like we all know them. They all know where the money's coming from. So the fact that many of these Western companies, Disney especially, are putting a lot of they're taking a lot of money, like, and not really asking any questions. I wonder if that's going to come to a bigger head at some point.
I mean, I think it must at some point, right? Like, or maybe not. I mean, I'd hope so, but also maybe not. Like, it's we don't do a great job with media literacy, so maybe we just won't. It's definitely a case of, it used to be that it'd just be inserted Chinese characters, and now there's definitely like important aspects of the narrative that are overtly Chinese, and that's not, again, not in itself a problem. I think but it's just that the backing for that is a problem. It's a situation, we'll say.
There's so many elements of Chinese culture that are interesting from a filmic point of view, and Chinese cinema can be very, very interesting. But when you're engaging with anything from that industry, then you are indirectly supporting what they're doing, like politically. And I don't know how that balances. And when those cultural elements that are so different from Western society, I mean, that's the point. When they're brought into a Western narrative, they really, really stand out. But this isn't just, I mean, it's not comparable. But in Japan at the moment, a major film director has had a number of sexual abuse allegations against him. And the Japanese film industry is not addressing it at all, like zero.
Yeah, for the record, he's talking about Sion Sono, I believe his name is.
I don't know.
He He most recently directed Nicolas Cage in Prisoners of the Ghostland, which is making the rounds right now. But turns out he's been abusive for ever. And it's sadly one of those cases too of like a really singular esoteric artist turning out to be a complete abusive douche. It's not exactly the same thing, but like it's definitely there's definitely something to be said for separating art from artist. But I find it quite difficult at times, and I do find it interestingly. I think I find it less difficult with Chinese funding than I do with watching something directly made by someone who's terrible.
Yeah,
like I had a much easier time watching Moonfall than I do watching anything with Kevin Spacey in it at this point.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah. I don't know. The industry as a whole seems to be very, very willing to take the money until somebody like slaps someone on their golden TV show, and then suddenly they're banned for 10 years.
That's
quite true. How long was Kevin Spacey's ban for from the Oscars? Did you? I missed that bit of information.
I know you're leading into a joke, but now I'm trying to think if they actually banned him or not. I don't know if they did.
No, they didn't. And not as far as I know. Do you know anyone else who's been banned from the Academy for?
I mean, honestly, if they were going to ban everyone from the Academy who turned out to be a bad person, they would have to ban most of the Academy. I think in this particular case, the difference is that Will Smith did it on the show.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it?
It's just I'm sure it doesn't help. I'm sure it doesn't help that he's African American. But I think if he slapped Chris Rock like the next day, I don't think he'd be banned from the Academy.
No, of course not. He broke the golden rule, which is all this shit is done off camera and not on our special TV show. Like, they weren't going to let that lie.
No,
anyway,
for sure not. Anyway, that's
very much like Moonfall. What's the stupidest part of this movie for you? Spoilers. Choose one most idiotic part that you loved.
I mean, I think I already said it. My favorite part is when they launch a space shuttle on 2 engines instead of 3, and they're able to do it because the moon has fallen so close to the Earth. But the moon is so close to the Earth that it's also causing a tsunami that they have to launch through.
Mine is tied between the moon can't do that. That means it must be heavier. Oh, the structure makes it heavier. And the spoiler when they save the day, and this is not a spoiler because of course they save the day. The moon is very close to Earth at this point, and it's going round and round our whole planet really quickly, like every 20 minutes. And they fly their spaceship out, and they land like they fly out of the moon and then hit the parachutes, and they land exactly where the rest of the cast is in the whole planet. Like, surprise!
I mean, that's just good timing. That's just good timing. That was on purpose.
Oh, of course it was. But I wouldn't expect anything less from a movie like this. I'm not interested in reality or scientific accuracy in a movie like this. I want to be entertained.
I do wish there was a lot less. I do wish there was nowhere near as much Elon Musk worship in this film, because I kind of hate that guy now. And this movie does go out of its way to like talk about how great he is a couple of times, and it really bugged me.
It does, and it clearly got sponsored by that Kaplinsky, like the guy who is now like very much in trouble. Didn't he get arrested or something? The Kaplinsky
you're thinking of McAfee, but the movie's clearly sponsored by Kaspersky, which is a really interesting timing now, because Kaspersky's a Russian cybersecurity firm. So it makes total sense that like they would use Kaspersky on the space station and the shuttle.
But the product placement is part of the fun as well now. I wonder if they make it a thing now, because apart from that name being on every computer screen, there's one like extended car chase, if you like, through an exploding road that is the best Lexus commercial you've ever seen in your life. Like, it is.
I mean, don't undersell it. They're driving down a road that's breaking apart because of the gravitational pull of a too close moon, while cars explode around them, and rednecks chase them with guns.
And the cars are still affected by gravity like it's normal, but the road is floating up. So the cars are like jumping on bits of road. So the cars have their own like specific gravitational field, but everything else is floating. Like giant chunks of masonry are floating up to the moon, but the cars are landing like on the bits of road. amazing.
I'm sure there's a physicist out there who's going to tell us that, like,
maybe
the chunks of road have more mass and as such are affected greater. But honestly, even if that were true, and I'm not a scientist, I don't know if what I just said makes sense or not, but I don't care because it was fun.
It really, really was. But there's one point where this Lexus kind of emerges, skidding out of this like a wall of smoke, and it comes through and it's lit with this beautiful blue light, and it sort of comes to a halt, and the camera is at bonnet sorry, what's the word here, hood height. And the camera like pans in on the Lexus symbol, like glistening with a little bit of water running down it. You're like, oh, that's kind of hot, I kind of want a Lexus now. Wow. And the whole chase is like, yeah, fuck yeah, Lexus. It's just amazing. I would watch that. That's the kind of movie that if you're really tired and your brain's tired, I don't know what to watch, I just want to watch something that, Moonfall. Okay.
Yeah. Or if you're
Moonfall
wide awake and want something fun. If you like Roland Emmerich stuff, I would argue this, I think I said last week, this is the most Roland Emmerich that he's ever Roland Emmerich'd. And it has everything. It has unfeasible natural disasters. It has crazy conspiracy theories. It has almost accurate but probably bunk science. It has a family that's broken being healed through disaster.
It has a moon. It has an internal moon structure that is full of kick-ass future-looking spaceships that have been there for like billions of years, ready for the human race to fly them. And they never fly them. They're just there. No one ever touches them. Where they need a spaceship at one point, and they just fly their own spaceship. Like,
well, to be fair, they fly their own spaceship after the moon automatically rebuilds it. So
why? Because they needed it to be rebuilt, so the moon can rebuild it. This is the kind of, it's a drinking game script where you all go around in a circle and add like stupid ideas to a stupid idea. And if you're into that, it works. It really works.
Yeah. So what are you going to give this movie out of 5, Simon?
Oh, this is a 5 out of 5. Come on. Let's not beat around the bush. This is 5 moons falling on 5 parallel Earths at the same time.
I appreciate your commitment to the bit. I mean, it's a solid 3 out of 5 for me. But that's not a bad thing. It's just, it's a fun movie. It's not a particularly deep movie, but it is a fun movie, and I enjoyed it very much.
I would say, like, if we look at his filmography,
it's pretty amazing high gloss B movie trash, and I enjoyed it on those terms.
It's like Independence Day without all the deep bits.
That's amazing.
But not like Resurgence.
No, I think this comes down to us both saying, yeah, you should definitely watch Moonfall. I don't know where it's available in the States, but it's on Amazon Prime here in Canada.
It's on Prime. It's on
Prime everywhere. It's on Prime everywhere. That makes sense.
I feel like it was made for Prime. I feel like they gave it, like, how long was it in the theater for? Maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks.
Like, it came out in February, so 2 months, give or take. 45-day theatrical window, man. That's the future. All right, so now that we've gotten Moonfall out of the way, which again you should totally watch, let's talk about Our Flag Means Death. And Simon, why don't you take us through the basics of this one? As few spoilers as possible.
So apparently it's based on real people that I didn't know until quite recently, but a 18th century, 19th century upper class gentleman has a midlife crisis and leaves behind all his money and very posh upbringing and wife and children to become a pirate. And he knows as much about pirating as I do about baseball. And so he buys a ship, which he calls the Revenge, and he sets sail and basically has a ragtag crew and learns about pirating as he tries to be a pirate. And he runs into another pirate who is famously Blackbeard, and he learns about pirating from Blackbeard, and Blackbeard learns about aristocratic life in England or New Zealand or wherever he's meant to be from Steed.
He's meant to be Stede Bonnet. So the pirate we're talking about, his name is Stede Bonnet. He was sort of I don't think he was quite what you would call a wealthy landowner, but he was a landowner, and he left his life for a life of piracy. And yes, early 18th century, quite a famous pirate, actually, and contemporary of Edward Teach, also known as Blackbeard. And I think he's technically British, but I believe he was born in like one of the colonies. Like he's from
Right.
Barbados or something. He's
Okay.
Barbadian. And yeah, Pirates of the Caribbean, but hilarious, basically.
So it's a show about kindness and companionship dressed up as a pirate show, but it is one of the most like heartfelt programs you're gonna see in a long time. It's my favorite comedy show since What We Do in the Shadows, easily, and it's got some very modern sort of language delivery, but with very old fashioned settings. And it's, if you like that Taika Waititi style of delivery, I think you're gonna love this. Like, I adore this show. And I know it took you a few episodes to get into it. What wasn't working for you at the beginning?
I don't know exactly. It did take me, like, I watched the first, I got about halfway through the first one and I turned it off. Like, I just wasn't in the mood. And eventually I came back to try it again. And I'm glad that I did, because after I watched the remainder of the first one and all of the second one, I then binged the rest of it in about 2 days.
Yeah.
And, because it was all available. It's all available at this point on HBO Max in the States and on Crave up here in Canada. And it's just, I think it's just a wonderful show, really. It's difficult to talk about it without spoilers, and I do feel like it would be more impactful if you don't have them, um, because of the way the narrative unfolds. But it's a very funny show featuring very funny people, and it is like you said, actually, it's a very much a show about kindness and companionship and chosen family and all of those things, and it's a very sweet show. It's
It really
very
is.
very hard on its sleeve, very, it's being sold as this sort of bumbling fool type show, but it's really not. I mean, Steve Bonnet, the character Steve Bonnet, um, is that. Don't get me wrong. He's completely out of his element. That's true. But that's not the point of the show. It does make for some comedy, but it's him learning from Blackbeard and Blackbeard learning from him, and Blackbeard doesn't even show up until episode 3 or 4.
Three, right
Three,
at the end of three. Yeah.
right? And it's a clear like build up that they're going to meet one another, and when they do, they end up having this relationship where they're learning about each other's lives. Like Blackbeard wants to become a bit more posh, and Steed wants to become a little more pirate, and they learn from one another, and it's a very delightful show, and
It
watching their
really,
impact on one another is just
yeah,
delightful.
it is. And it's nice where you have these two men on completely opposite ends of the spectrum, both having a midlife crisis and sort of meeting each other in the middle. And it's just, I don't know, it is hard to talk much more about it. You can probably gather what we're alluding to, but it's it is a comedy, but there's so many moments of real emotional pathos that work brilliantly. Like, when you've got a show like this that is kind of stupid to begin with, because Rhys Darby, who's very very good at playing this kind of bumbling, um, like, he's from New Zealand, but it's this very British style sort of bumbling idiot, and he has done it in a few other shows as well. Werewolves, not swearwolves. But he throughout the episodes is just, I've never seen him act in anything like this nuanced as well. And Taika Waititi is a fantastic actor, particularly in the latter half of the season, where he's really called on to do some very subtle emotional work and really give himself to it. He's just incredible, really incredible, and it makes the whole thing just feel so much more, right, than just a comedy show. It's very tempting to think this is like What We Do in the Shadows. It's largely stupid, but funny stupid. It's really not. It's brilliantly written, and we haven't even talked about the direction yet. There's a needle drop at the end of episode 8. there's a piece of music used when one group boards another group, and it is so brilliantly directed. The whole thing is really interestingly directed anyway, because they use a lot of close-up shots and lots of kind of views of people obscured by sails and things. It's really interesting when you notice it. It's a really interesting directing technique that is not very common, and I think it works brilliantly. But in terms of the geography of the ship and the when they put anything to music, and there's a lot of music in it as well, it's just brilliantly done, like fantastically directed. And it breaks my heart that there's so many questions over whether it's going to be renewed or not, because there's no other show that I've seen that has this humor, this intelligence, that is genuinely empathy. Right. It's genuinely funny, has so much to say at a time where we really need to say it. Like, so many people are feeling isolated at the moment. And one of the main themes of this as well is like male companionship. Like men are not kind of allowed to experience companionship in the same way that women are. We're just not. And to see something that really focuses on like free male companionship, both like attracted to, but or just platonic, or just like you were saying, a chosen family. It's really refreshing. I just loved it. I loved it so much. I love this show so much. I can't even. It's been so. It's so fresh for me as well. I only finished watching a few hours ago, and I just haven't seen anything this good in so long. And
I worry that it's kind of maybe too much of an ask for, for the audiences that would normally watch something like What We Do in the Shadows, which is, to be fair, it's not as shallow as, like, it's actually some very deep parts, and Taika Waititi and that whole group are very good at sneaking meaning into things. But there's a lot about the show that is, I think, probably a bigger ask than, and to be fair, should not be, but is a bigger ask for certain groups of people. And it's also just not really the show that it's being advertised as, or at least of the marketing that I've seen. And I sort of wonder that it's not hitting because of that. But it's also like you're saying, it's just super good, and everyone in it is good. The whole supporting cast, and I would like to particularly highlight. Everyone, like Christian Nairn, who you probably know from Game of Thrones, who's Hodor, plays, this huge brute of a man who's actually quite tender, but also a pyromaniac. and it's sort of wonderful, especially after his turn. Like, you sort of know he could do that from Game of Thrones. Samson Ko, I believe his name is, and Joel Fry have a great episode together where they are grifting a bunch of aristocrats. Ewan Bremner plays the type of like bonkers, lovable, wacky that only Ewan Bremner can play. Who else?
Matthew Maher as Black Pete. I love like the evolution of his character as well, and there are lots of surprising moments, especially with Matthew Maher's like character. At one point, has a pretty major story movement of revelation, and it just, like you say, there's going to be moments in this that a certain subset of people are going to just turn off instantly, because it's not that the main part of this story is going to be challenging for people who are not comfortable watching certain relationships happen, and
or even
that
just
is like dreadfully sad. I think
there's a wonderful character called Jim, played by Vico Ortiz, and they are a non-binary person in real life, and they play a woman masquerading as a man in the show, and that the whole storyline there is also they have a great relationship. I really appreciate that the entire crew just uses they them pronouns the whole time after it comes out that they're not a man. And they have some really great relationships with the rest of the crew. It's everything about it is just so wonderful and accepting, and then you have like the few antagonists of the show, like what's the guy who plays Izzy Hands.
Izzy.
Con O'Neill plays Izzy Hands, and he plays a sort of wonderful, frustrated, very competent person who's sort of in Blackbeard's shadow. And he does a wonderful job. And then you get Rory Kinnear, who plays twin British naval captains. And like, we don't really appreciate Rory Kinnear in his time, but he's a great actor and he's a great comedic performer. And I feel like he just needs some appreciation. Everyone in the show is great. So,
and ensemble pieces are very, very hard to write and very hard to direct, because it's really hard to kind of make everyone stand out from each other, so you can track who's who, what their relationship is, what they're doing. If you see a face in a scene, you need to be able to know who that person is in the crowd. And this is so brilliantly written and directed. Even within the first episode, you know who everyone is. You know what their relationship is. I'm really sensitive about people saying, like at the beginning of the first Halo episode, so here's the story that you need to know so far. And they are all so well written, and their delivery is so dry and quick, but there's so much kindness in there as well. Like you mentioned, when because Jim is masquerading as a man called Jim until they come out to be someone who is a woman pretending to be a man. And there's this wonderful conversation around table what everyone else should call them at this point. And the poor thing is like sat there and they're saying like, I don't know, like I don't know any of this, I don't know. And so everyone else has a nice chat, and the conclusion they come to is that they just want to keep calling them Jim because they like the name Jim. And they're like, yeah, I like Jim. All right, Jim. Like, and they just call them Jim from now on.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
It's so good, and it does have a lot of themes that are challenging, but it doesn't sort of beat you over the head with them. Like, it never feels preachy. It just feels kind, and I think that's the key approach, isn't it? Is like,
that's an excellent way to put it. It treats every storyline with empathy and kindness.
Yeah.
Even though it's definitely going to be, again, it shouldn't be, but a big ask for some people. Yeah. And it's exactly the kind of story we need to, move the needle for those kinds of people, I think. I hope.
You'd hope so. It's such a fundamental point, and especially in the last couple of episodes, there's quite the tone shifts to a little bit sadder in a couple of episodes because of people not being able to be their authentic selves. Like, they make decisions that are not necessarily the best for them, and we see the fallout of this, and you just know that this is millions of people's lives, is like that sadness where they can't be the authentic person they want to be. It's just wonderful. It's fantastic. And it's just, even with all these themes, it's just a brilliantly written comedy, brilliantly acted, and with real heart. And how often does that come along? Like, HBO really has to renew this, because it does end on it does open the door for a season 2 very, very wide.
I mean, I don't think it's a spoiler to say that it ends on a pretty big cliffhanger. Well, it's not really a cliffhanger, I guess, but it is like a place where you definitely want to see more. Like, it's definitely, there's not the resolution that you need or want from the story. And I really hope it gets the second season.
I don't know. It hasn't been renewed yet, and the showrunner was on Twitter this week, basically saying they should just renew this shit now, right? Right? Please renew this now. And I really hope they do, because what else is there? I haven't seen anything else like this.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely live in a golden age of content but it's definitely currently a quantity situation, not a quality one. And if the show doesn't make a big splash off the bat, then that sort of lessens their chances. But you're right that if it did end where it ends, it wouldn't necessarily be satisfying, but it is an ending. And so what are you gonna give it out of 5? I'm assuming a 5.
There's no even question. It's been a 5, like, from episode 1, but yeah, it's with all the episodes down, it's a 5 out of 5. Brilliant show. What about you?
I would agree, having seen all 10 episodes, that all 10 together are a 5 out of 5 for me. Definitely took me longer to get on board than you did.
Yeah.
But honestly, I could probably chalk that up to just the mood I was in the day I tried to watch it as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's a pretty wonderful show, and it's definitely a 5 out of 5 for me.
Mm-hmm.
So
good. So what have you got coming up in the next week?
I have no idea. It's been such a busy week this week. But we'll have something, I promise. It'll be a surprise. How about that?
Surprise to us as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Good.
There is, I mean, honestly, we're at a point now where there's so much stuff in theaters, and I still don't feel great going to theaters. And so we're definitely going to be talking about streaming stuff in the next week, most likely.
Yeah. How do you feel about just waiting for stuff? Like, do you feel that I have massive FOMO problems. Like, if something comes out and I want it, I can't wait for it. But how do you feel about, say, the Batman? Are you going to be happy to wait for that just to hit home streaming? Like, do you feel any need to actually go out and see that film?
I mean, I don't to the same degree that I used to, but I definitely feel like we missed, whenever we see it, even if we saw it tomorrow, we will have sort of missed the discourse for the podcast, right? It's all about that timing, and I feel like there's a couple of movies that we could be talking about this week and next week that we're just not going to have the opportunity to see because theaters are not exactly a non-starter, but they are. It's a more difficult choice now than it was before for me. I think for you as well. And the lack of home screeners for us is it's something we can't see, we can't get around, and studios want to do it. It's their business, and I can't, I don't have to like it, but I do respect that that's the way they want to do business. But it definitely means we're going to be covering a lot more streaming releases here on the podcast. So
well, the comedy, what's it called, the comedy pandemic,
the bubble.
The Bubble, thank you, not The Button. That's just come out, and that looks like something that could either be really good or really terrible. But I enjoyed the trailer very much.
All signs point to really terrible so far.
Oh, have there been reviews?
Oh yeah, review embargo on that one dropped a few days ago, and it's not good.
Oh,
I will probably still end up watching it, but
of course.
Yeah.
We could always talk about Halo again as it evolves.
So I watched the second episode of Halo, and it was
me too.
Not good, but in a different way. So
a different way of bad.
Yeah, it's bad, and it just boils down though to that they really don't seem to give a shit about the source material. Basically, it's what it really boils down to for me. I think if I wasn't a Halo fan, I might like it better. I still don't think it was good, but I don't think I'd be so disappointed.
I don't think so. Even outside of that, it's not well written. It's not well directed. It's not well conceived. It's not well designed. Like
there's precious little action in this action show too.
It's so like separated from what I would expect a Halo show to be, in terms of quality and in like content as well.
Yeah,
which
is
a shame. Okay, well, good.
Can't win them all.
No, who saw that one coming? God, what a mystery!
I know, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think we're going to wrap it up there. So that's a definite recommend on both Moonfall and Our Flag Means Death. You can find streaming links for both of them on this episode's homepage, which you can find in the show notes. If you've liked what you have heard, you can give us a 5-star review on your podcasting platform of choice. We would greatly appreciate that. It helps us immeasurably. And if you'd like to support us a little more directly, we do, of course, have a Patreon as well. Again, linked in the show notes, along with all of our links for the media's social, which is the correct pluralization of that. Kind of like how the correct pluralization is, it's a Stars War, but that's a whole other conversation.
Oh Jesus! Is it a Stars? Is it a Stars Trek as well? Then?
No, it's a Star Trek, but it's a Stars War.
Oh, I see.
Because Star Trek is singular.
They only go to one star.
They only trek to one star at a time, whereas all of the stars are at war.
So, right.
Yeah.
You know, I never considered that before.
Yeah. Shocking.
Yes.
As always, this is where we say we thank you very much for listening. This episode, we don't write, we just talk. But it's recorded and produced by me, Matthew Simpson, with the participation of Simon. We do it all on the unceded lands of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations here in beautiful Vancouver, BC. And we love each and every one of you very much.
It's true.
So reach out, say hi. On again, probably the best way to do that is on the socials media. The media's social. Whatever I said before, that's the one that's right.
And Matt will read it because I've deleted all mine again. Let's see how long it lasts for this time. But I'm enjoying having none of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit jealous, but that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah,
for another time.
Sure.
Do you have anything coming up you want to talk about before we dip out, or like?
No. So I mean, I'm finishing up playing Kirby on the Switch, and I've just started playing Lego Stars War on the on my PlayStation 5. So maybe I'll do another gaming podcast. But in terms of films, I very much want to watch The Bubble. No, The Bubble, right?
Yeah.
What's it called? And
I asked this because there is a contingent of people who seem to want another gaming episode. So
is that a subtle hint? Yeah, I should do that. It's I should squeeze that one in. Yes, a gaming podcast will be coming, guaranteed.
Awesome. Well, on that bombshell, let's call it a day. Thank you so much for listening. We love you all, and we will see you next week on another awesome Friday.
Bye.